She slips Mafia Boss a note, "They're watching you. Act normal." He grabs her wrist instead. Riley Armitage was 26 years old and lived a life split in two. By day, she was an EMT student in Bay Bridge, New Columbia, learning how to stitch wounds and restart hearts. By night, she was a contract card dealer on the Echelon, a luxury yacht that gleamed like a white knife against the city's industrial harbor. Tonight was tycoon poker night. The air in the main salon was thick with the scent of expensive cigars and the low murmur of men who measured their wealth in tonnage and territory. Riley kept her face smooth, a professional mask, as her hands dealt the cards with a rhythmic, practiced snap. She was good at this job, good at being invisible. But tonight, the invisibility cloak was wearing thin. She recognized a presence she knew from a different life. They were not guests. They wore suits that cost a tenth of the custom tailoring at the tables. Their shoes were soft-soled, built for quiet movement, not for showing off Italian leather, and they spoke to each other without moving their lips, using only quick, angled glances. It was the signature of the Coastal Federal Enforcement Bureau, the CEB, a federal agency that spent its entire budget trying to untangle the criminal knots tied at the city's port. They were a hunting pack, and they had just found their target. He walked in at 11:30 p.m., flanked by two men who were built like refrigerators. Cassian Vega, 34 years old, on paper. He was the CEO of Vega Urban Logistics, a successful shipping conglomerate in the whispers of Bay Bridge. He was the man who owned the water, the docks, and half the coastline. He wasn't the boisterous, fur-coated caricature of a gangster. He was American, with a Latin edge that showed in the precise cut of his dark vest and the faint, faded ink of a tattoo just visible behind his ear. He moved with the slow, deliberate confidence of a man who did not just visit a room, but possessed it. The CFEB agents tensed. One man at the bar, posing as a bored investor, subtly shifted his weight. Another, near the exit, brought his drink to his lips but did not sip. Riley felt a cold spike of adrenaline. It was a setup, a raid, then her blood turned to ice. She saw the man leading the CFEB team, sitting at a low-stakes blackjack table to maintain his cover. He was looking directly at Cassian Vega, his focus too sharp, too hungry. Dylan Ward. It had been 3 years. Her ex-boyfriend, the man she had loved before he chose the badge over everything else, was here. He was now an agent, apparently assigned to the interagency threat offensive team. And he was seconds away from blowing his own operation by staring. Riley's mind raced, calculating the fallout. This was not her fight, but if the CFEB made their move here, in this room, the Echelon would be locked down. Every employee, every contract worker, would be detained for interrogation. Her hospital clearance for her EMT clinicals would be revoked, pending a federal investigation. Her name would be flagged, and her sister, Maya, who was already struggling, would lose Riley's half of the rent. She could not let that happen. Her hand moved automatically. She palmed a chip voucher from her apron. With her back to the surveillance cameras, shielding her movements with her body, she scribbled 5 words on the back of the slip. She waited until Cassian Vega's table was between hands. She moved toward him, adopting the practiced smile of a hostess. "Mr. Vega," she said, her voice pitched just loud enough to be polite. "A note from the house." She slid the folded voucher onto the green felt beside his stack of chips, exactly as she would a drink receipt. Cassian Vega did not look at her. His eyes remained on the center of the table. He let the note sit for a full 10 seconds. The agents tensed, sensing a transfer. Dylan Ward started to rise from his chair. Slowly, Vega picked up the slip. He unfolded it beneath the lip of the table. Riley watched his eyes. They were dark, assessing. They read the words, "They're watching you. Act normal." A normal man would have flinched, looked around, or perhaps subtly nodded. A guilty man would have bolted. Cassian Vega did neither. His eyes flicked up to hers, just once. It was not a look of gratitude. It was a look of sudden, sharp calculation. Then, before she could even register his intent, his hand shot out. He did not go for his chips. He did not go for a weapon. He grabbed her wrist. It was not a strike, not a violent yank. It was a capture. His grip was absolute, his fingers wrapping around her pulse as if claiming ownership. Riley gasped, a small, sharp sound. "Excuse us," Vega said to the table, his voice a smooth baritone that cut through the room's chatter. He stood, pulling her with him. He did not just pull her, he drew her into his side, his other arm sliding around her waist, possessing her entire posture. To the room, and more importantly, to the CFEB agents, it was not an escape. It was a dismissal. He was the boss, tired of the game, taking his girlfriend or his entertainment for the night upstairs. Dylan Ward froze, his face a mask of confusion and sudden, personal fury. He had to sit back down. The operation was compromised. Vega was acting normal, just as the note had instructed, but he was doing it in a way none of them could have predicted. He had turned a potential arrest into a public display of intimacy, and the agents were forced to watch, their hands tied. Vega guided her past the bar, past the confused agents, and toward a private elevator tucked behind a velvet rope. Riley's heart hammered against her ribs. Her feet barely kept up. She was no longer an invisible dealer. She was an accomplice, pinned to the side of the most powerful man in the harbor. The elevator doors slid shut, encasing them in polished steel and silence. The car began its smooth, soundless ascent toward the upper technical decks. Cassian Vega finally released her. He did not push her away, but stepped back, creating a yard of pressurized space between them. He straightened his cuff, his gaze pinning her to the wall. The friendly lounge boss was gone. The man in the elevator was the one who owned the coastline. His voice was low, deep, and devoid of any warmth. It vibrated in the small space, aimed directly at her ear. "How did you know they were watching me?" The elevator doors opened not to a penthouse, but to the working guts of the ship. The air on the technical deck was cold, smelling of ozone and diesel, and filled with the deep, mechanical hum of the yacht's generators. The sound vibrated through the steel floor. Cassian Vega did not release her until the doors had sealed behind them. He guided her, not gently, toward the nearest bulkhead. His palm came to rest flat on the steel wall, just beside her head, penning her in. His other hand was still on his hip, his body language relaxed, but his proximity was an interrogation in itself. He was close enough for her to see the fine grain of his skin, to feel the heat radiating from his suit jacket. "You have one chance to tell me the truth," he said. His voice was not raised, but it carried over the thrum of the engines. "You are not a dealer. You're not a hostess. So what are you?" Riley forced herself to meet his gaze, to keep her own voice from shaking. "I am a dealer and an EMT student, and I am broke. That is all I am. You identified a federal surveillance team in under 30 seconds. That is not a skill they teach in medical school. I used to know one of them," she said, the admission tasting like ash, a long time ago. "I learned their tells, the way they stand, the way they never order a real drink, the way they watch. It is a pattern." She needed him to believe her. She needed him to believe she was telling the full truth. "That is not all," she pushed on, her words coming faster. "Your security team is sloppy. The CFEB had 2 micro cameras set up, one on the liquor display, one in the ventilation grate. Both were angled too low. They were amateurs, probably from a different unit, but they were there. I saw the glint. They were not just watching. Mr. Vega. They were recording. They were building a case, and tonight was the night they planned to close it." He stared at her, his expression unreadable. His eyes dropped from her face, scanning her. It was a slow, methodical inventory. "Who do you work for?" "Really?" he asked. "I told you. Myself. And my sister." His gaze was unnerving. He seemed to be looking for the seams, the cracks in her story. Then, with a speed that startled her, his hand moved. He did not hit her. He did not threaten. He began to search her. His fingers were long and warm. He started at her collar, his touch impersonal yet electric. He brushed aside the lapel of her dealer's vest, his knuckles grazing the skin of her collarbone. Riley sucked in a breath. her back pressing hard against the cold steel. He was looking for the telltale lump of a wire pack. His hand moved up, into her hair. He threaded his fingers through the strands at the nape of her neck, tilting her head forward slightly. She could feel his breath on her temple. It was the most intimate search she had ever endured, a violation performed with the casual authority of a man who believed he had the right. Her heart was a trapped bird against her ribs. "Nothing in your hair," he murmured, more to himself than to her. His hand dropped, and she thought it was over, but it was not. His palm slid down her side, over the ribs of her vest, coming to rest on her hip. His thumb pressed just below her hip bone, feeling the line of her skirt, searching for any unnatural bulk, any hidden device taped to her skin. She was frozen. It was a security measure, clinical, but her body responded with a wave of heat that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with the man standing so close to her. He found nothing. He stepped back, just a few inches, but the pressure in the air remained. "So you did it to save your job?" he asked, his voice laced with disbelief. "You risk tipping off a man like me to avoid a long night." "I am not like you," Riley said, her voice shaking now, but with anger. "I cannot afford to be. I do not have lawyers. I have rent. I have a night class on Monday, being held for 12 hours in a federal holding cell, having my name on a CFEB report. That is not an inconvenience. It is the end of my job. It is the end of my clinicals. I acted to save myself." He watched her, a long, silent moment of assessment. His earpiece, a subtle, clear wire, chirped. He tilted his head, listening. Riley could only hear the faintest, tinny squawk of a voice on the other end, a man's voice, presumably his bodyguard. Griffin Holt reported in. The CFEB team was scrambling. They were confused. The target had been alerted, and their primary surveillance angle was compromised by the girlfriend. The operation was a bust. They were pulling back. Cashin's eyes returned to Riley's. The cold assessment was gone, replaced by something else, something calculating, but different. He had been looking at a problem. Now, he was looking at a solution. "You were right," he said. "They are leaving." He took a step closer again, the brief reprieve gone. "But your problem is just beginning. From the moment you passed me that note, you are on their video. You are not the dealer who saw nothing. You are the woman who helped Cassie and Vega evade a federal sting. They will dig into your life until they find a root, and when they find your CFEB ex-boyfriend, they will assume the worst." He laid out the options with devastating calm. "So you have a choice. You can go downstairs, let my men escort you off the boat, and wait for them to pick you up. They will find you before you make it home. Or you can leave with me, right now. And what happens if I leave with you? They will still look for you," he said, "but they will not find you." Riley's mind flew to her apartment, to her sister, Maya, and to her 7-year-old nephew, Eli. She saw federal agents knocking on their door, flashing badges, terrifying them, tearing apart the fragile life they had built. She saw Eli's face, confused and scared. There was no choice at all, only the illusion of one. "I will go with you," she said, her voice barely a whisper. Cassian nodded once, as if she had just confirmed an obvious fact. He tapped his earpiece. "Bring the car to the secondary dock. We are coming down." He did not grab her this time. He simply motioned toward the elevator. They rode down in silence, the hum of the generators fading, replaced by the sterile quiet of the elevator. They bypassed the party levels entirely, descending to a service exit she had never used. The doors opened onto a small, private dock. The salt spray of the harbor was sharp. A black armored SUV was waiting, its engine purring. The man who had flanked Vega earlier, Griffin Holt, held the back door open. She was handed in. Cassian slid in beside her, the door shut with the heavy, final sound of a vault. This was her first lesson in how a port boss disappeared while under federal watch, not with a bang, but with a silent, heavy click. The SUV pulled away from the echelon, melting into the shadows of the container-stacked shoreline. Riley watched the glittering yacht recede, a symbol of the normal life she had just forfeited. inside the cabin. It was dark and silent. Cassian leaned back against the plush leather, the tension finally leaving his shoulders. He had not let go of her wrist during the entire transfer. Now, in the dark, his grip loosened, but his fingers remained. A warm weight on her pulse. "Your name?" he asked the darkness. "Riley. Riley Armitage." He was quiet for a moment, then he shifted, and she could feel his gaze on her, more potent than his touch. "From now on, Riley," he said, his voice a low promise. "You are no longer invisible." The armored SUV was a void of silence in the noisy, damp streets of the South Dock District. It moved with a heavy assurance that was alien here, where beat-up sedans and delivery vans rattled over cracked asphalt. Riley guided him to her building, a 4-story walk-up that smelled perpetually of salt, rust, and the fried onions from the street-level bodega. The vehicle was too clean, too black. As it idled by the curb, curtains twitched in the windows opposite. Mrs. Petrov, who had lived there for 30 years, peered out, her face a mask of suspicion. Riley's stomach twisted. She had just painted a target on her own front door. "Wait here," she told Cassian, but it was not a request. She got out of the SUV and ran up the 3 flights of stairs, her footsteps echoing in the narrow hall. She burst into the apartment, her heart hammering. The space was small, cramped, but clean. Toys for a 7-year-old boy, Eli, were neatly stacked in a plastic bin. Her sister, Maya, looked up from the kitchen table, where she was surrounded by invoices for her food truck, Maya's Smokehouse. At 32, Maya looked older, the stress of a small business and single motherhood etching fine lines around her eyes. "Riley, what is wrong? You look like you have seen a ghost." "Worse," Riley whispered. "We have a visitor." "Do not panic." "Eli." "Asleep in our room," Maya said, starting to rise, her eyes wide with alarm. "Riley, who is—" The door was already open. Cassian Vega filled the doorway. He had to duck slightly to enter. The low ceiling of the apartment seemed to press down on him. He was a man built for boardrooms and open water, and here, surrounded by their mismatched, second-hand furniture, he looked like a panther caged in a shoebox. His bodyguard, Griffin Holt, remained in the hallway, a silent, imposing shadow. Maya made a small, terrified sound, backing against the kitchen counter. Cassian's gaze swept the room, taking in everything. The worn couch, the small kitchen, the stack of bills on the table. He was not disgusted, he was assessing. His eyes stopped on the wall above their tiny, non-working fireplace. It was a framed photograph of a man in a Bay Bridge Fire Department dress uniform, his smile wide and proud. "My father," Riley said, her voice tight. She did not know why she offered the information. Cassian stepped closer to it. He was a firefighter. "He died in the 2014 port explosion," Riley said, "at the East Warehouse. He was one of the first responders." Cassian's expression did not change, but his focus on the photo sharpened. The 2014 explosion had been a turning point for the harbor, a disaster that had bankrupted one shipping company and allowed another, his, to rise from the ashes. He looked from the photo back to Riley, and for the first time, a flicker of understanding passed between them. He finally understood why she hated the docks, why she had wanted to avoid a CFEB report at all costs. The port had already taken everything from her. He broke the silence, turning his attention to the immediate threat. He pulled a thin, dark tablet from his inner jacket pocket. He did not ask to sit. 5 minutes after we left the Echelon, he said, tapping the screen. He showed her footage, sharp and clear, taken from a high angle, a drone. It showed the main salon of the yacht swarming with CFEB agents. It showed Dylan Ward, his face furious, slamming his hand on the poker table she had just left. "They did not get what they wanted," Cassian said, "so they will focus on what they saw. You." He swiped to a new image. It was a still, clearly enhanced from the yacht's own security feed, which his team had obviously hacked. It showed her, leaning in, sliding the note. Then he swiped again, a grainy, long-distance shot from the CFEB surveillance team, capturing her face as she looked up at him. You are in their file now, Riley. You are no longer an unknown. You are the woman who compromised their operation." Maya stepped forward, her hand gripping a wooden spoon like a weapon. "What do you want? Get out of our house." "I am offering a solution," Cassian said, ignoring Maya and speaking only to Riley. "You cannot go back to that yacht. You cannot go to your EMT classes. They will be waiting for you at both. Your association with me, even for 30 seconds, makes you a person of interest. They will leverage you to get to me." "So what you hide me," Riley challenged. "I employ you," he corrected. "Vega Urban Logistics needs internal medical staff. We have dock workers, container crews, administrative staff. Accidents happen. You would be on the corporate payroll. The pay is 3 times what you are making as an EMT trainee. And," he added, his gaze flicking toward the closed bedroom door, "I will assign a private car to take your nephew to and from school. He will never be alone." It was not the offer of a kidnapper. It was a corporate benefits package. "No," Maya said, her voice shaking but firm. "No, I do not care what you pay. She's not getting involved with you. With the Mafia, get out." Riley said nothing. She walked past Cassian to the front window, which overlooked the street. She pulled the thin curtain aside. The black SUV was still there, but it was not alone. Further down the block, parked under a flickering streetlight, was a generic, dark blue sedan. It was unmarked, but it screamed government. 2 men sat inside, their silhouettes visible, their attention fixed on the entrance to her building. They were already here. "Maya," Riley said, her voice dead. "Look." Maya joined her at the window. She saw the car, and the strength seemed to run out of her. She leaned against the wall, the wooden spoon clattering to the floor. The choice had been an illusion. The danger was already at their door. Cassian did not need to raise his voice. He did not threaten. He simply stated the facts from the center of their living room. "The CFEB will come knocking tomorrow. They will ask about your sister. They will ask about her finances. They will look into your food truck permits. Maya. They will interview Eli's teachers. They will disrupt your lives until you give them what they want. I will not." He had them. He knew it. Riley turned from the window. She would not be a victim. If she was going to do this, she would do it on her terms. "One day," she said. "I will come tomorrow. One day. A trial." Cassian inclined his head. "Fair. And my family," Riley continued, her voice gaining strength. "I want them out of here. Tonight. You own the Harborview Residences, the private corporate tower. I have seen it from the highway. I want an apartment there. Not your penthouse, not a mansion. A secure, neutral apartment where those men on the street cannot get in." Cassian studied her, a brief flash of respect in his eyes. She had not just accepted, she had negotiated. "Done," he said. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a slim, black wallet. Extracting a blank white key card, he placed it on the kitchen table, next to Maya's scattered invoices. "Griffin will arrange the transfer. A moving team will be here in 1 hour. Pack what you need." He walked to the door, pausing with his hand on the knob. He looked back at Riley, the warmth of the apartment not touching the cold calculation in his gaze. "You saved me once tonight. I will repay that debt, but do not try to sell me to the CFEB. Riley, I will not be in your debt a second time." He turned and left, the door clicking shut behind him, leaving the key card gleaming under the dim apartment light. The Vega Urban Logistics Tower was not a shadowy warehouse or a back alley office. It was a 20-story blade of glass and steel that dominated the redesigned wharf district. The lobby was aggressively legitimate, featuring a 3-dimensional model of the entire Bay Bridge port, sunlight gleaming off polished marble, and a digital ticker announcing global shipping futures. It was the public face of a corporation, clean and impenetrable. Griffin Holt, Cassian's ever-present shadow, badged Riley through a private elevator bank. The car did not have buttons for most of the floors. It was a direct ascent. The doors opened on the 17th floor, and the atmosphere changed instantly. This was the real headquarters. It It was not a sea of cubicles, but a high-tech command center. Dozens of monitors glowed with logistics data, GPS pings from ships at sea, and high-definition feeds from every dock and warehouse Vega controlled. The low, urgent hum of professionals at work filled the air. A woman approached, her heels clicking decisively on the dark wood floor. She was tall, impeccably dressed in a severe black suit, with dark hair pulled into a tight chignon. Her expression was cold, intelligent, and unwelcoming. "You must be the girl from the echelon," she said. Her voice was smooth, with the faintest trace of the same Latin accent as Cassian. "I am Valeria Santos, his cousin." She emphasized the last word, establishing a boundary Riley had not even considered crossing. "I am also the chief financial officer." Valeria looked Riley up and down, a quick, dismissive appraisal. "Griffin, take her to June for processing. She needs her credentials and a new device." As Riley turned to follow, Valeria's voice, sharp as glass, stopped her. "A piece of advice, Miss Armitage. No one lands on this floor by accident. You are not here because we had an open position for an EMT. You are here because Cassian wants you here. Why he wants you is his business. But understand this, you are a complication. Do not become a liability." Riley was processed by a young, fast-talking tech expert named Joan Park, who seemed to operate on pure caffeine. In less than 20 minutes, Riley had a new identity. She was issued a Level 4 access card, photographed for the internal system, and handed a sleek, black encrypted smartphone. "This is your life now," June said, not unkindly. "Your personal phone is a brick. Do not turn it on. Do not use it. This device is on the internal Vega network. It is safe." He then handed her a tablet. "And this is your new job." She was expecting HR policies. Instead, it was a series of tactical medical protocols. Trauma response confined quarters, emergency triage ballistic wounds, rapid field suturing. It was a curriculum for a combat medic, not a corporate nurse. She was given a small, well-stocked clinic room off the main floor. She spent an hour familiarizing herself with the advanced medical supplies, her hands shaking slightly. Then, Cassian entered without knocking. He was holding his own tablet. "You missed a briefing," he said, his tone all business. He gestured for her to follow him, leading her into a glass-walled conference room. A long, dark table dominated the space. "Sit," he commanded. Riley sat in a chair against the wall, away from the table. Cassian remained standing as Griffin Holt escorted another man in. The man was a burly, weathered ship captain, his face pale with sweat. "Captain Mercer," Cassian began, his voice dangerously pleasant. "You had an unscheduled stop on your last run from Miami. It was engine trouble. Mr. Vega, I swear. Just a 2-hour delay." "You were dark for 2 hours," Cassian interrupted, his voice hardening. "No engine report, no comms, and when you docked, your fuel logs were off. Your cargo weight was lighter than the manifest." The captain started to stammer. "It is a mistake, a clerical error." "No," Cassian said. He slid a tablet down the polished table. It displayed satellite photos of Mercer's ship docked at a small, unsanctioned quay, transferring 2 containers to a smaller, faster boat. "You've been skimming from me. Coal. Worse. You sold the route timing to Raul Dominguez." Riley tensed, expecting a roar of anger, the flash of a weapon. Instead, Cassian just looked disappointed. "This is not a negotiation," Cassian said softly. "Your contract with Vega Logistics is terminated. The vessel you captain, which my company holds the note on, is now seized. Griffin will take your credentials and escort you from the building. You have 1 hour to clear your personal items from your ship. After that, you will be trespassing." The captain's face went from pale to gray. He had not just been fired, he had been erased. He was ruined, dismantled by a contract and a balance sheet, not a bullet. He said nothing. His shoulders slumped in defeat as Griffin guided him out. Riley was left alone in the room with Cassian. The silence was heavy. She was shivering, though she had not noticed the cold until now. The air conditioning was set to Arctic. Cassian, who had been staring out the window at the harbor, turned. He seemed to notice her for the first time. his gaze softening almost imperceptibly as he took in her posture, her arms crossed tightly against her chest. He said nothing. He simply shrugged off his dark suit jacket, stepped toward her, and draped it over her shoulders. The jacket was heavy, lined with silk, and impossibly warm. It smelled of him a clean, complex scent of cedar and salt air. It was a gesture so unexpected, so intimately protective that it sent a jolt through her, warmer than the wool itself. "The server room keeps this floor cold," he said, his voice low, offering a practical excuse for a personal act. He did not move away immediately. "You see now," he said, his eyes holding hers. "The threats are not always loud. That captain was a leak. The CFEB is a leak. And the Harbor Kings, Dominguez. They are a flood, waiting to break the dam." He finally gave her the real job description. "Valeria thinks you are a distraction. I think you are an asset. I have 100 men on security. They are trained to spot guns, to watch for ambushes. They are not trained to spot a man who is trying too hard to look bored. You are. You saw them on the yacht when my own team, men I pay 6 figures, missed them." He stepped back, returning to his role as the boss. "Your job is not just to patch up wounds. Riley, your job is to watch. Be my eyes. Tell me who does not belong." She was dismissed with a nod. She walked back to her clinic, his jacket still clutched in her hands. That night, in the quiet, sterile luxury of the new apartment at Harborview Residences, she felt a vibration, not from the new, encrypted phone Jun had given her, but from deep inside her backpack, her old phone, her personal phone. She had kept it, a single, stupid thread to her past. She pulled it out. The screen was bright in the dark room, one new text message. It was from Dylan. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. "You're in something you can't swim out of. He's not just a criminal. Riley, he's a monster. Let me help you." The first event Cashin required Riley to attend was not a museum gala or a charity ball. It was the launch of the Skyline Orbit, the city's newest, highest observation deck. It was a 360-degree circle of glass suspended 1,000 feet above the harbor. This was where power convened. Investors, city council members, and the heads of rival logistics companies all present to smile, drink champagne, and quietly slice up the rights to the new shipping lanes. Riley felt exposed. She wore a simple, dark dress. The one she saved for high-end dealing gigs, her EMT kit, modified for trauma, was in a discreet black bag near her feet. Looked after by Griffin Holt, she was officially on the clock. Cassian had introduced her exactly once, to a curious city councilman who had let his gaze linger. "This is Riley Armitage," Cassian had said, his voice smooth and professional. "She is with my medical team." Not his date, not his girlfriend, his team. It was a corporate designation, clean and sterile, yet it bound her to him more tightly than any romantic label could have. It also gave her a defined purpose. While Cassian worked the room, radiating a calm authority that drew people to him, Riley did the job he had actually hired her for. She watched. She scanned the staff, the waiters, the technicians, the event security, and she found him. He was near the south-facing window, pretending to check a junction box for the massive presentation screens. He wore the standard event uniform, but his earpiece was the coiled, clear plastic type favored by federal agents, Dylan's CFEB team, but the man's stance was wrong. He stood with his weight centered low, balanced, like a man used to a moving deck, not a technician used to handling delicate wires. He was a dock worker. He was one of Raul Dominguez's men. Riley's blood ran cold. He was not just watching. He was filming, using a pin camera on his lapel, trying to capture Cassian's private conversations with the politicians. This was not a federal sting. It was corporate espionage, mafia style. Her hand moved, finding a cocktail napkin. She grabbed a pen from the bar. She moved to Cassian's side, waiting for a break in his conversation with a Port Authority official. "Mr. Vega," she interrupted softly, holding out the thick presentation folder he was scheduled to use. "I believe you dropped this." He turned, a flash of annoyance in his eyes at the interruption. Then he saw the napkin she had tucked inside the flap. His fingers closed over it. He did not look down. "Thank you, Miss Armitage," he said. He turned back to the official. "If you will excuse us, I must show my associate the view of Pier 12. She is new to the company, and the view from here is exceptional." Before Riley could react, his hand was on her shoulder. It was not a gentle caress. It was a firm, possessive grip that pulled her flush against his side. He guided her to the expansive glass window, putting their backs to the room. "It is magnificent, is it not?" he murmured, his voice warm for the benefit of anyone listening. He pointed down at the glittering lights of the harbor. His hand on her shoulder, however, was a vice. Riley realized his body was shielding her from the room and shielding his own mouth as he spoke, almost silently, into his cufflink. "Griffin, south observation window. Technician, dark hair. He's filming. Remove him." Riley watched the reflection in the glass. She saw Griffin Holt detach from the crowd. He and another Vega man converged on the technician, flanking him, and guided him silently toward a staff-only exit. It was done in less than 30 seconds. The threat was neutralized. Cassian's hand lingered on her shoulder. "Good eyes," he murmured, his breath brushing her ear. He was about to release her when the massive presentation screens, which had been showing looping videos of the new architecture, flickered and changed. It was not the promotional video. It was a live video call. Raul Dominguez's face filled the 60-foot displays, magnified and grotesque. He was smiling, a gold tooth glinting. He was clearly on a lower floor of the same building, enjoying the chaos he was about to create. Cassian Raul's voice boomed across the observation deck, amplified by the event's high-end sound system. "Good to see you enjoying the view. I hope you're getting a good look at Pier 12. He laughed, a harsh, barking sound. "You cannot hold it forever, amigo." The investors and politicians froze. They looked around, confused, assuming this was some bizarre, staged corporate rivalry. They chuckled nervously, waiting for the punchline. Cassian did not laugh. His hand tightened on Riley's shoulder, shoving her sideways, hard, just as a sound like a supersonic crack split the air. It was not a boom. It was a snap. A circle of frosted glass, the size of a fist, appeared in the window 2 feet from where Cassian had been standing. Panic erupted. People screamed and ducked, a wave of expensive suits and jewelry hitting the floor. It was not a professional hit. It was a cheap, dramatic statement, a bullet fired from a nearby rooftop to sow chaos. It had worked. As Cassian moved to shield Riley, shoving her behind a thick structural pillar, the specialized glass designed to hold together flexed and sprayed a localized shower of tiny, sharp cubes. "Stay down," he roared. The screaming subsided into whimpers. Griffin and his team were already moving, securing the exits, their weapons drawn. Cassian checked himself, then looked at Riley. "Are you hit?" "No," she said, her voice shaking. I am fine." He started to stand, but Riley saw it. Dark blood was welling up on his left forearm, a deep, jagged slice from a shard of the safety glass. "Fine, you are bleeding," she snapped. The fear evaporated, replaced by the cold, focused adrenaline of her training. She grabbed her medical bag. "It is just a cut," he said, pressing his hand over it. "Do not hold it like that," she commanded, shoving his hand away. Her voice was no longer the soft, corporate associate. It was the sharp, commanding bark of an EMT at a trauma scene. "You will push the glass deeper. Give me your arm. Now." He stared at her, stunned by the sudden, absolute authority. She grabbed his arm. "This is going to sting, so try not to be a baby about it," she said, pouring a sterile saline wash directly into the cut. Cassian hissed, the muscles in his jaw clenching, but his eyes were fixed on her. She was fast, efficient, her hands sure as she applied a thick gauze pad and began to wrap it, her movements tight and economical. Amid the chaos of his security team shouting into their mics and guests crying, Cassian Vega did the last thing she expected. He let out a short, sharp laugh. It was a sound of genuine, surprised amusement. "You have a terrible bedside manner," he said, his voice tight with pain. "I'm not here to hold your hand," she replied, not looking up from her work, pulling the bandage tight. "I am here to stop the bleeding. You are lucky it missed the artery." Her ability to cut through the chaos, to curse at him while mending him, to touch his blood without flinching, it was a revelation. He was looking at her. She realized, not as an asset or a complication. He was looking at her as something else entirely. They left the chaos, taking a secure service elevator to the garage. The ride back to the Vega Tower was silent. His blood, a small dark stain, was on the cuff of her dress. They stood in the private glass elevator ascending to the 17th floor, the lights of Bay Bridge spreading out below them like a carpet of diamonds. The city was quiet from this high up. He stood closer than he needed to. She could feel the lingering warmth of his skin. He had refused painkillers, and she knew the cut on his arm was throbbing. He turned, his shoulder brushing hers, his gaze intense. "On the yacht," he said, his voice a low rumble. "You saved me from the CFEB. Tonight, you saved me from Raoul." He was very close now, his face just inches from hers. She could smell the faint, metallic tang of his blood under the scent of his cologne. "I do not like owing anyone twice. Riley." His eyes dropped to her lips, just for a moment. The look in his gaze was no longer cold, no longer assessing. It was something else. It was warm, and it was dangerous. The cut was worse than she thought. The makeshift pressure bandage she had applied at the tower was soaked through, under the harsh, fluorescent lights of the service bay. The wound looked angry, the skin around it already inflamed. They were not at the tower. Griffin had driven them, not to the luxury apartment, but deep into the secured, private section of the port. He had parked the SUV inside a vast, cavernous building that smelled of diesel, cold steel, and the low-tide brine of the ocean. It was a ship repair workshop, filled with massive chains, welding equipment, and the dark hulls of vessels in for secret modifications. It was quiet, save for the rhythmic slap of water against the pilings far below. "The glass was safety ply," Riley said, her voice echoing in the huge space. She was all business now. Her EMT focus absolute. It did not just cut you, it shattered. It is full of pulverized fragments. She looked up from his arm to his face. "This needs to be irrigated and sutured, or you will have an infection by morning that could cost you the arm." Cassian just looked at her, his expression calm. He had faced much worse than a piece of glass. He gestured to a small, cleaner office built into the side of the workshop. "My private office. There is a first aid kit, a real one. Do what you must." The real kit was a military-grade trauma chest. She found sterile saline, iodine, forceps, and a complete suture kit. She laid everything out with practiced precision on his metal desk. "I need light, and you need to take off your shirt. All of it." He did not argue. He unbuttoned the cuffs of his ruined $1,000 shirt, his movements economical despite the pain. He pulled the fabric away from the wound, wincing as it stuck. He tossed the shirt aside. He followed it with his undershirt, pulling it over his head. Riley's breath caught in her throat. She had been a professional, clinical. But the sight of him made the air in the small office feel thick and hot. In the suit, he was powerful. Without it, he was a different kind of force. His body was not the puffed-up muscle of a gym rat. It was the dense, functional strength of a man who had worked these docks. His shoulders and chest defined and solid. A few pale scars, thin white lines, marked his skin. And then there were the tattoos, faded black ink, old and telling a story. A detailed mariner's compass was etched onto his ribs, its points aligned with his heart. He sat on the edge of the desk, giving her access to the wound. The industrial lamp cast harsh shadows, highlighting the hard planes of his chest and the tension in his jaw. "This will hurt," she said, her voice coming out slightly huskier than she intended. "Get on with it." She set to work. She poured the antiseptic solution, flushing the wound, her touch firm. He did not flinch, though she saw the muscles in his neck tighten. Then, the worst part. She took the fine-tipped forceps, her face just inches from his bare skin, and began to meticulously pick out the tiny, glittering shards of glass. She could feel the heat radiating from him. She could smell the clean, sharp scent of the antiseptic mixed with the deeper, male scent of his skin. Her own pulse was hammering in her ears. She was so close she could see the faint stubble on his jaw, the way his dark eyelashes rested against his cheek as he looked down at her hands. Her fingers, usually so steady, began to tremble. A tiny, betraying tremor. He saw it. He was watching her face. Not the wound. He had been analyzing her reaction to him. Not the pain. His good hand, his right one, came up. It moved slowly, deliberately, not wanting to startle her. He placed it on her hip. The touch was not sexual. Not yet. It was solid, grounding, a silent command. His palm was warm through the thin fabric of her dress, his fingers splayed, holding her steady. "You are in control, Riley," he murmured, his voice a low vibration that seemed to travel from his hand straight through her. The simple, possessive act calmed the shake. She focused, extracted the last sliver of glass, and prepared the suture needle. She began the first stitch. "You were reckless," she said, breaking the silence, her voice tight with the residual adrenaline. "Staying at the window like that, it was a stupid, arrogant risk." He was quiet for a long moment, watching the needle pass through his skin. "Was it?" he countered, his voice smooth. "Was it more reckless than warning a mafia boss that he was being watched right in front of your ex-boyfriend?" Riley's hand froze. The needle hovered over his skin. "What?" "Dylan Ward," Cassian said, his voice flat. "CFEB, promising young agent until he let his temper get in the way. Dated you for 2 years. You ended it 3 years ago. Right after he took the federal oath. I know everything that happens in my city. Riley." She stared at him, her face pale. He had known. He had known from the beginning. "How? It does not matter. You took a much bigger risk than I did tonight. Why?" She finished the stitch, pulling it tight, her movements angry now. "I told you. To protect my family. To protect myself." She tied off the last suture, her work neat and precise. The silence stretched, thick and heavy, filled only by the distant sound of the tide. She cut the thread and stood back, her job done. She turned away from him, gathering the used supplies, trying to rebuild her professional composure. "I do not let people see me weak," he said, his voice quiet. Directly behind her, she spun around. He was standing, closer than she expected. "I do not like people touching my wounds," he continued, his gaze intense, traveling from her eyes to her mouth. "But you, Riley, you, I allow—" Before she could form a reply, he moved. His hand came up, not to her hip, but to the nape of her neck, his fingers tangling in her hair, tilting her face up to his. He did not hesitate. He covered her mouth with his. It was not a gentle exploration. It was a kiss of sudden, absolute possession, a claim. His lips were hot and firm, moving against hers with a demanding pressure that sent a shockwave straight to her core. It was the raw, unfiltered energy she had felt in the elevator, finally unleashed. It tasted of control, of power, and of the faint metallic tang of his own blood. A small sound, a gasp, died in her throat. Her hands, which had been at her sides, flew up, landing on his bare shoulders. Her back hit the metal tool cart, and the surgical instruments rattled loudly in the quiet workshop. He took her gasp as an invitation, deepening the kiss. His other arm circled her waist, pulling her flush against his body, lifting her off her feet as if she weighed nothing. He did not break the kiss, but turned and set her down on the edge of the sturdy metal desk she had just used as a sterile field. Now they were eye to eye, face to face. The kiss broke, but they remained a breath apart, both of them breathing hard. She was trapped between his arms, his bare chest against her. He rested his forehead against hers, his eyes closed for just a second. His thumb stroked her cheekbone, a gesture of surprising tenderness. "There are no cameras here, Riley," he whispered, his voice thick and raw. "No CFEB, no bodyguards. You can want me for real. No acting required." His hand moved past her, gripping the edge of a heavy canvas curtain that was meant to shield the office from the welding sparks of the workshop floor. With a single, powerful motion, he pulled it, The heavy material slid across its metal track, the sound of the rings scraping against the rod echoing in the vast space. The harsh industrial lights were blocked out, plunging them into the intimate shadows. Riley woke with a start. The light was wrong. It was thin and gray, the color of dawn filtering through the dirty blinds of the workshop office. She was not on the desk. She was on a worn, black leather couch, tucked into the corner of the room. She was still in her dress, but her shoes were off, placed neatly on the floor beside her. Cassian's jacket, the one from the tower, was draped over her. A heavy, warm weight. It smelled of him. She sat up, her heart pounding, piecing together the night. It had not been a dream. The intimacy, the connection after the kiss, had been real. She saw him. He was standing by the window, already dressed in a fresh, dark shirt that he must have kept here. He was on his new phone, the encrypted one, his back to her. He ended the call, his voice too low to hear, and turned. The warmth of the previous night was gone. His face was hard, the strategist back in control. "What is it?" she asked, her voice hoarse. "That was June," Cassian said, his voice flat and cold. "The Coastal Federal Enforcement Bureau made an official inquiry at 0600 this morning. They have formally borrowed your academic and personal records from the Bay Bridge EMT program." Riley's stomach dropped. The warmth of the jacket evaporated, replaced by an icy dread. "Dylan." "Yes," Cassian said, his eyes like dark steel. "The game just changed. Riley, your ex-boyfriend has officially pulled you onto the battlefield." The message came on her old phone, the one she was not supposed to use, the one she had kept hidden in her bag like a bad habit. It was a single, simple text from a number she still knew by heart. The cafe across from St. Jude's, 1 hour, come alone. It was Dylan. She had to invent a reason to leave the tower. She told Griffin she needed to retrieve a hard copy of her transcripts from the EMT school registrar, claiming the CFEB's digital pull had locked her out of the system. It was a flimsy lie, but it was the best she had. Griffin looked at her, his expression unreadable, but he nodded and let her go. The cafe was bright, smelling of burnt coffee and cinnamon. It was a piece of her old life, a place she and Dylan had gone a dozen times. Seeing him there, in a booth in the back, felt like a betrayal. He looked older, tired, and the warmth he once had for her was gone, replaced by a hardened, professional resentment. He did not say hello. He slid a 9x12 manila envelope across the Formica table. "You look good, Riley," he said, his voice flat. "The hostage life suits you." "I am not his hostage." "Dylan." "Are you not?" He tapped the envelope. "Open it." Her hands trembled as she pulled out the photographs. They were not of her. They were sharp, long-lens images. The first was of Maya, laughing as she pushed Eli on a swing. Riley recognized the location instantly, the private, high-security park attached to the Harborview residences. The second photo was of Eli, his small backpack on, getting into the black sedan Cassian had assigned as his private car. The third was of Maya's food truck, parked at its usual lunch spot, with 2 men in plain clothes clearly observing it from across the street. Riley's breath hitched. A cold dread, sharper than any fear she had felt for herself, seized her. He did not protect them. "Riley," Dylan said, his voice a low, cold whip. "He tagged them. He put his scent all over them. They are associated. They are part of his organization now, in the eyes of the law." "They are civilians," she whispered, her voice shaking. "Eli is a 7-year-old boy, and he is being chauffeured by a known enforcer for the Vega Syndicate. We are not the only ones watching. Riley, what do you think happens when Raul Dominguez decides to hit Vega where it really hurts? You put them in the line of fire. What do you want?" "Dylan," she asked, her voice dead. "We want Vega." He leaned in, his gaze burning into hers. "I do not want to arrest you. I told my superiors you were coerced, that you are a victim, but they will not believe that for long unless you cooperate. We need to know his movements. When is he meeting Dominguez? We know the Harbor Kings are squeezing him. We need to know his shipping routes. Give us something we can use. Give us Vega. And if I refuse, then you are not a victim. You are a conspirator. And we will treat you like one. We will bring Maya in for aiding and abetting. We will find a dozen health code violations on that truck and shut her down. We will place Eli in protective custody. We will—" "Stop," she said. The single word was sharp, cutting him off. She could not breathe. He was threatening her nephew. He was using the one thing in the world she could not, would not, risk. She looked down at the photo of Eli, his face bright and innocent. The choice was gone. "Yes," she whispered, the word tasting like poison. "I will help you." He slid a small, featureless burner phone across the table. "Once a day. A text. That is all. Tell me where he is, who he is meeting. We will do the rest." She walked back to the Vega Tower, the burner phone heavy as lead in her pocket. She felt hollow, a ghost in her own body. She composed her face, putting the old dealer's mask back on, invisible, professional, calm. She entered the 17th floor. The command center was quiet, the afternoon lull. She nodded at June, ignored a cold look from Valeria, and made it to the sterile safety of her small clinic. She began to count bandages, to check expiration dates on saline bags, anything to keep her hands busy. But they were shaking. The door to the clinic opened without a sound. It was Cassian. He did not speak. He just stood in the doorway, watching her. He was a man who had built an empire by reading micro-expressions, by sensing the shifts in the tides, by knowing when a man was about to lie, cheat, or run. He watched her hands tremble as she fumbled a roll of gauze. "You are afraid," he said. It was not a question. "I am fine." She lied, her voice too high. He stepped inside, his presence filling the small, white room. He closed the door, the latch clicking shut with a sound of absolute finality. He walked toward her until she was backed against the stainless steel supply counter. "You went to see him," he said. Riley's head snapped up. "How did you know?" "I know everything that happens in this city," he said, his voice quiet. "And you have been terrified since the moment you walked back into this building." He leaned in, his proximity overwhelming, and then his voice changed. The cold authority of the boss was gone. The heat of the lover from the workshop was gone. He sounded, for the first time, like a man who had been struck. His voice was low, rough, and laced with a profound, cutting disappointment. "Did he scare you that much, Riley? Did he frighten you enough to make you turn on me, to go back to him?" The accusation, the raw hurt in his voice, broke her. The composure she had fought so hard to maintain shattered into 1,000 pieces. "He did not scare me," she cried, her voice cracking. "He threatened Eli." She ripped the photos from her pocket and threw them onto the counter between them. "He showed me these. He threatened my sister. He said he would take my nephew. He said he would shut down Maya's truck. He said they would dig up my father's past. He gave me no choice." The words poured out, a torrent of fear and guilt. She told him everything. The burner phone, the demand for his schedule, the meetings with Dominguez. Cassian's gaze dropped to the photo of Eli on the swing. The muscle in his jaw clenched, a single, hard spasm. Riley braced for the explosion, for the cold fury, for him to call her a traitor and have Griffin throw her out, and he was silent for a full minute. When he finally looked up, the disappointment was gone. The strategist was back, colder and more calculating than she had ever seen him. "You are wrong," he said, his voice a flat, dangerous calm. "You did have a choice, and you just made it." She flinched. "What? You chose to come back here," he said. "You chose to tell me the truth. You did not lie." He stepped back, his mind clearly racing, processing, turning the threat into a weapon. "Good. Good, Cassian. I just agreed to be a federal informant." "No," he said, a sharp, thin smile touching his lips. "You just became my double agent. You are not going to spy on me. Riley, you are going to spy for me." He picked up the burner phone Dylan had given her. He examined it, then tossed it back. "You will contact him. You will give him information. You will give him exactly the information I tell you to give him. Roots that are 1 day old. Meetings that have already been changed. You will feed the CFEB just enough truth to keep them on the hook, and just enough lies to make them bleed." He gripped her shoulders, his gaze burning into hers, pulling her back from the edge of her panic. "They think they found my weakness. They think they can use you to destroy me. We are going to use them to clear the board." His grip tightened, his thumbs stroking the hollow of her collarbones. "But you have to do exactly as I say. From now on, you will not see Dylan Ward. You will only talk to him on that phone. And when you do—" His voice dropped, the strategy suddenly blurring with something intensely personal. "Do not let him think he still understands you. Do not let him think he has any power over you at all." He released her, stepping away, the air in the room turning cold. "For the next few days, we will not be seen together. You will stay in your clinic. I will be in my office. Let his surveillance see you alone. Let them think you are isolated, that I am losing interest. It will make your reports seem more desperate, more credible." The distance was immediate, a tangible thing. The warmth of the workshop, the feeling of his jacket over her, felt like a lifetime ago. For 3 days, the ruse held. Riley sent 3 useless, slightly off reports. The CFEB Stage 2 failed intercepts on empty cargo vans. On the 4th night, Riley was in the command center, charting medical supply inventories when the main operations board lit up red. "Mister?" Vega Junpark shouted, his voice tight with panic. "Unauthorized breach at the leased warehouse on the East Pier. It is Raul Dominguez. The Harbor Kings are moving in. Heavy numbers." Cassian was on his feet instantly. "Griffin, deploy the response team. Now." As his men scrambled, a second alert flashed, blinking on the same coordinate. "Sir," June said, his voice a whisper, "there is another force. They are coming in from the north perimeter. It is the CFEB. They are staging a full tactical raid. Sir, they are both hitting the same target at the exact same time." Riley looked at Cassian, her blood turning to ice. The warehouse address was not the one she had given Dylan. Cassian stared at the screen, watching his 2 greatest enemies converge on his asset. He turned, his face a mask of cold fury, and looked directly at Riley. "That," he said, his voice a low, lethal growl, "was not from your leak. We have a traitor, someone on this floor." The air on the 17th floor was brittle. The simultaneous, disastrous raid on the East Pier warehouse had cost Cassian a valuable asset, but it had confirmed his suspicion. The leak was not just sloppy, it was sophisticated. He convened an immediate, closed-door meeting. Only 4 people were present: Cassian, Valeria, Griffin Holt, and June Park. Riley was, for the first time, invited to sit at the main table. Valeria, her face a mask of cold fury, looked directly at Riley. "The CFEB leak we are managing, this second leak, the one that tipped off Dominguez, began the week you arrived. It is not a coincidence." "It is not her," Cassian said, his voice flat, silencing his cousin. "Riley's leak is Agent Ward. We're using that. This other one is opportunistic. It is someone who already had access, someone who felt wronged. Jun. The access logs for the East Pier manifest." Jun Park's fingers flew across a keyboard, bringing up a data stream on the main wall. "Boss, the manifest was sealed. Access was restricted to 5 users only. You, Valeria, Griffin, me." June paused and tapped one more key. "And Cole Mercer." "Mercer," Griffin growled. "The captain you fired 3 weeks ago. He was skimming," Cassian said, a cold light in his eyes. "He was sloppy, and now he is vindictive. He thinks he is invisible. He is selling our data to Dominguez for cash and likely feeding the CFEB for leniency. He's trying to get paid by both sides for the same information. So we find him and we eliminate the problem," Valeria said. "No," Cassian replied. "He is a rat, but he is a predictable rat. We do not find him. We let him find us. We are going to set a trap." His gaze swept the table. "We are going to create a ghost shipment, a big one." He looked at June. "Create a new manifest, top priority. We will call it the Catalina load. On paper, it will be a multi-million-dollar shipment of specialized pediatric incubators and scanners, bound for the new City Children's Hospital. High value, low risk, and subsidized by the state. It is the perfect target for the CFEB to seize as a money laundering operation, and the perfect, clean score for Raul Dominguez to steal." Valeria nodded, the strategy clear. Mercer still has back-channel access through the old dockworkers server. He will see it. He will. Cassian agreed, and he will sell it to both his buyers. He then turned his full attention to Riley. The room went silent. And you, Riley, are going to make sure the federal bait is taken. I want you to use the burner phone. You will contact Agent Ward. You will tell him about the Catalina load. Tell him it is the one. Tell him I am using the children's hospital shipment to wash my weapon profits. Make him believe it. Riley's stomach twisted, but she nodded. This was the job. This was the deal. She sat at the table, surrounded by the most powerful figures in Cassian's organization, and typed the lie to her ex-boyfriend. I have something big, a new shipment codenamed Catalina load. Docking Friday, high-value medical gear for the children's hospital. He's using it to wash his cash. The reply from Dylan was almost immediate. When? Where I need specifics. Cassian dictated a set of false coordinates, a leased warehouse on the abandoned west side. Riley sent them. They waited. It took 2 hours. He is in, June said suddenly, his voice quiet. Mercer's ghost credentials just accessed the Catalina manifest. He's looking at the bait. An hour later, June spoke again. And we have confirmation. He just made a secure, outbound call to a known number in the Harbor Kings network. Dominguez has the information. Good, Cassian said, leaning back. The trap is set. They will both converge on an empty building this Friday. We will be waiting. But they had all misunderstood the kind of man Raul Dominguez was. He was not a patient rat like Mercer. He was a wolf, and he did not wait. The countermove came the next afternoon. Riley was in her clinic, organizing the trauma supplies, when her encrypted Vega phone buzzed. It was Cassian. His voice was not the calm, strategic tone of the meeting. It was a low, lethal growl. Riley, where is your sister? The question hit her like a physical blow. What it is, Wednesday. She's at the downtown food truck festival. Why Cassian? What is wrong? There was a long, terrible silence on the other end, filled only with the sound of Cassian's breathing. I sent Griffin to check on her. The truck is there. The grill is still smoking. Her phone is on the counter. But Maya is gone. Riley's legs gave out. She sank onto her stool. No, he would not. Not Maya. He did, Cassian said, his voice like granite. We just received a call from Raul Dominguez. He's not going to wait for the Catalina load. He wants to renegotiate. What does he want? She whispered, her hands shaking so badly she dropped the phone. She fumbled for it, putting it on speaker. He wants to trade, Maya, for the Catalina load, but he has one condition. He does not want my drivers. He does not want my men. He wants you to deliver the shipping credentials to him, in person. He wants to meet the woman who spotted his man at the tower. Yes, Riley said, scrambling to her feet, the panic replaced by a white-hot, singular focus. He has her. He has Maya. I will go. I will go right now. Riley, it is a setup. He will not honor the deal. Cassian said, I do not care, she shouted, her voice echoing in the small clinic. He has my sister because of me. This is my fault. I am the one he wants. I am going. You're not going alone, Cassian said, his voice absolute. This is not a surrender. It is a rescue. But you are right. You are the one he will talk to. Get to the command center. Now. When she burst onto the 17th floor, it was already a war room. Griffin Holt was checking a case of tactical gear. Valeria was on a terminal, moving assets, locking down accounts. Cassian intercepted her, his hands gripping her shoulders. His touch was not gentle, it was grounding, forcing her to focus through the panic. You will go, he said. But you will be our ears. June Park hurried over, holding a delicate silver bracelet. It is not just jewelry, he said, fastening it on her wrist. It is a two-way microcom. Squeeze the clasp twice. It activates a hot mic. We hear everything. Squeeze it 3 times. It is a panic signal. We can talk to you, but only when you activate the channel. He also handed her a new, standard-looking smartphone. This one is a ghost, but its GPS tracker is military grade. We will be 1 block behind you every step. Your job, Cassian said. forcing her to meet his eyes, "is to keep him talking. You will give him this." He handed her a forged data chip. "It has the Catalan credentials. You will stall. You will negotiate. You will keep him focused on you until my team is in place. Do you understand?" Riley nodded, her throat too tight to speak, as if on cue. The new phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. It was not a message. It was just a set of coordinates and a time. Joan put the location on the main screen. An image populated a rotting, skeletal pier, the dark shapes of a Ferris wheel and a roller coaster stark against the gray sky. "The Seafront Mirage Pier," Griffin said, his voice grim. "It has been abandoned since the '99 hurricane. It is a maze, a perfect place for an ambush." Cassian looked at Riley, his face unreadable, but his eyes were filled with a cold fire. "It is time." The Seafront Mirage Pier was a skeleton. The wind moaned through the rusted metal lattice of a forgotten Ferris wheel, and the air tasted of salt and decay. The pier had been abandoned after the '99 hurricane, and the planks groaned under Riley's feet, protesting every step. She squeezed the silver bracelet on her wrist twice, activating the microphone. "I am here," she whispered. "I am walking the main concourse." Cassian's voice, filtered and tinny, replied in her ear. "We see you. I have eyes on you from the drone, and Griffin's team is moving along the south piling. Keep walking." "Where are they?" "At the end of the pier, in the old arcade building." Riley walked toward the dark, shattered building, her heart a cold stone in her chest. She saw them. 2 men, shadows in the gloom, and between them, Maya, tied to a chair but, thank God, upright and seemingly unharmed. Raul Dominguez stepped out of the shadows. He was shorter than Cassian, broader, with a politician's smile that did not reach his cold, flat eyes. "Miss Armitage," he said, spreading his hands in a gesture of welcome. "The woman of the hour, the one who can spot a ghost. I am Raul." "Let her go," Riley said, her voice shaking but hard. "I have what you want, the Catalina credentials." She held up the data chip. Raul laughed. "You think he sent you with the real chip. He is not coming. Chica, he's a businessman. He's cutting his losses. He has already chosen the Catalina load over his new pet. You and your sister, you are a bad investment." "You are wrong," Riley said, stalling, her mind racing. "The chip is encrypted. It needs a biometric scan from me and a passcode. It is useless without me." It was a good lie. Raul's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. He was considering it. Clever, but ultimately, "It does not matter. I do not just want the Catalina. I want Cassian's access to the Westport, and he will give it to me, in exchange for you both." "He will be here," Riley insisted. Scanning the building, her eyes traced the pathways, the exits, and then she saw it. It was not obvious. Just a thin, dark wire, almost invisible, strung at shin height across the main, vaulted doorway. It led up, snaking into the rotten, water-damaged rafters. She followed the line with her eyes. The roof was a mess of collapsed beams and sodden insulation, all of it held up by one remaining load-bearing wall. The wire was attached to a series of packages, explosives. It was a trap, not for her, for Cassian. If his team breached the main entrance, the tripwire would detonate the charges. The entire roof would collapse, burying them all. Raul was standing right there. She could not speak. "What is it, Chica? You look pale," Raul mocked. I am just..." Riley stammered, thinking fast. She looked around. A ruined ticket booth stood nearby, its window shattered, on the rotting counter inside. A sun-bleached, peeling map of the old amusement park lay covered in dust. She clutched her stomach. "I think I'm going to be sick. The stress." She stumbled, accidentally bracing herself against the ticket booth, her hand landing on the map. Her fingers tore a corner of the brittle paper. "She is weak," Raul sneered. Riley kept the torn scrap palmed in her hand. She needed a pen. She patted her pockets. Nothing. Then she remembered. She fumbled in her pocket for the burner phone Dylan had given her. It was dead. But she used its dark screen, angling it to catch the light. She pretended to wipe sweat from her forehead. her back to Raoul, her movements shielded by her body. She fumbled, as if she were about to drop the phone, and in that second she dragged the sharp edge of the phone's casing across the paper, scratching words into the surface. It was crude, but it would be visible. Roof is rigged, stairs only. Act normal. She took a shaky breath, then lurched forward as if she were about to vomit. "I am sorry," she gasped, and let the small piece of paper flutter from her hand. It landed, face up, on the faded, painted logo of the park's mascot, the exact spot Jun had told her to use as a marker for the drone. "Pathetic," Raoul said, turning away in disgust. In her ear, she heard June's voice. "Griffin, camera 2, enhance. We have it, boss. We have a note, roof is rigged. Stairs only, act normal." There was a half-second of silence. Then, Cashin's voice, grim and controlled. "He takes the C stairs. Griffin, Team B, divert. Go, go." Raoul was losing patience. "My men tell me Vega's vehicles are close, but he is not coming. He's sending his dogs. He needs a reason to show his face." He strode over to Maya, unlocking the chair from the floor. He yanked her to her feet, his arm locked around her throat. "Let us see. Will he choose his asset or his girlfriend?" He began to drag Maya out of the arcade and onto the open pier, toward the rotting edge where the planks had fallen away, leaving a 30-foot drop to the black, churning water below. "No!" Riley screamed, her blood turning to ice. She lunged forward, trying to get between Raoul and her sister. A hand grabbed her, yanking her back. One of Raoul's guards slammed her to the ground, his hand twisting her arm painfully behind her back, pinning her. "Stay down! Now, Cassian!" Raoul bellowed into the wind, holding Maya over the churning water. "You want her? Come and get her. Show me your face. I believe you were looking for me." The voice came from the shadows behind them, not from the entrance, from the side. Cassian, Raoul spun, his eyes wide, his gun coming up, but he was too slow. Cassian had come up the rotted service stairs from the water, just as the note had directed. He was drenched, his clothes dark with seawater, his face a mask of cold fury. Before Raoul could make his choice, before the guard pinning Riley could react, Cassian moved. He did not go for Raoul. He did not go for Maya. He lunged for Riley. His hand shot out, his fingers wrapping around her wrist in the same absolute grip he had used on the yacht. It was the tidal move, the gesture that had started it all. But this time, it was not a question. It was not a capture. It was a rescue. He yanked her to her feet, pulling her bodily from the guard's grasp, spinning her behind him and shoving her toward Griffin, who had appeared at his side. "Now!" Cassian roared. The pier erupted in chaos. It was not a wild firefight. It was precise. Griffin's team used flashbangs, the sound deafening, the light blinding. They moved with brutal efficiency. There were 3 shots, controlled, aimed at legs and shoulders. Raoul's men went down. Cashin himself closed the distance to Raoul, tackling him to the ground just as the man tried to throw Maya over the edge. It was over in 20 seconds. Raoul Dominguez was on his stomach, his hands being zip-tied behind his back. Spitting curses, Riley scrambled to Maya, cutting the ropes on her hands with a knife Griffin gave her. Her sister collapsed into her arms, sobbing hysterically. "It is okay. Maya, it is okay. I have got you." Riley helped her sister to her feet, then turned. Cassian was standing a few feet away, his gun lowered. He was breathing hard, the wind whipping his wet hair across his face. He was watching her, his chest rising and falling. She took a shaky step toward him. He met her halfway, closing the distance in a single stride. His arms came around her, pulling her into a hard, crushing embrace. He buried his face in her hair, one hand gripping the back of her head, the other locked around her waist, holding her so tightly it almost hurt. It was not a kiss. It was an affirmation. He was holding onto her as if she were the only solid thing on the rotting pier. He pulled back just enough to look at her, his dark eyes blazing with a mix of terrifying anger and profound relief. "You," he said, his voice a rough growl, "and your goddamn notes. You are going to make me an old man before I am 40. She let out a laugh that was half a sob, her hands clinging to the front of his shirt. "You got it. Did you not? I got it." He was about to say more, but he suddenly tensed. his gaze going distant. He was listening to his earpiece. The relief on his face vanished, replaced by a cold, hard mask. "What?" Riley whispered, her newfound safety evaporating. "What is it?" "Jun," Cassian said, his voice flat. He did not release her, but his arm tightened around her waist, as if shielding her from the new threat. "The CFEB is en route to our position. They are 2 minutes out. They tracked the burner phone, just as we planned." He looked past her, toward the causeway that connected the dead pier to the city. A line of flashing red and blue lights was racing toward them in the twilight. "They are not here for Raoul. They are here for me. The trap we set for them. It just closed on us." The air was cold and gray. Dawn was breaking over container dock 14, painting the sky in shades of bruised purple and watery orange. This was Cassian's territory, the heart of his shipping empire, but this morning it was a federal zone. CFEB vehicles, lights flashing silently, had created a hard perimeter, blocking every exit. Dylan Ward stood in the center of the chaos, his face grim, his federal jacket zipped high against the wind. His team was moving, efficient and armed, opening containers. "Vega," Dylan yelled. "By the authority of the Coastal Federal Enforcement Bureau, you are to stand down. We have a warrant to seize this dock and all assets associated with the Catalina load." Cassian stood near his own truck, flanked by Griffin. He was calm. He had let them come. "You are on private property. Agent Ward," Cassian said, his voice carrying easily in the cold air. "Not today," Dylan motioned, and 2 agents dragged a 4th person into the light. It was Raul Dominguez, bound in zip ties, his face swollen. "He's been very helpful," Dylan said. "He's prepared to testify about your entire operation, starting with your inside source." Raul, seeing his chance, lunged forward as far as the agents would allow, his eyes wild and fixed on Riley, who stood just behind Cassian. "That is her!" Raul screamed, the sound echoing off the steel containers. "That is the girl! She is his! She has been his mole from the start! She fed him my intel!" Every CFEB agent turned, their focus landing on Riley. The accusation hung in the air. Toxic and damning. A senior CFEB commander, a man Riley did not recognize, stepped up to Dylan. "Agent Ward, your victim theory just evaporated. Arrest her. She is a material witness and a co-conspirator. I want her in an interrogation room." "Sir." "She was coerced," Dylan began. "Now," Agent the commander barked. Dylan's face was a mask of conflict. He walked toward her, his hand on his issued handcuffs. Riley watched him come. This was it. The moment she had been dreading. She glanced at Cassian. He was watching her, his expression unreadable. He was not angry. He was not afraid. He was waiting. This was not a test of his. It was a test of hers. The man who represented her old, normal, safe life was walking toward her with handcuffs. The man who represented her new, dangerous, chosen life stood behind her, offering nothing but his silent presence. Dylan stopped in front of her. "Riley Armitage," he said, his voice a low, pained official monotone. "You are being detained for questioning." He reached for her wrist, the one Cassian had grabbed. As his fingers closed around it, Riley's other hand moved, a swift, practiced motion from her nights as a dealer. She palmed a tiny, folded piece of paper, another note, the last one. She pressed it into his hand as he brought her arm behind her back. The metal of the cuff cold against her skin. "Do not read this," she whispered, a desperate plea. Dylan's fingers closed around the note. He cuffed her, his movements stiff. He turned her around, and in that motion, he shielded his hand from the commander and opened the note. His eyes scanned the 5 words she had scribbled. "Container C7 has Dominguez's payment logs, not Vega's. Check timestamp." It was a final, desperate gamble. Dylan's eyes flicked up to hers, wide with a sudden, dawning understanding. He saw the truth. She was not just a mole. She was a double agent. "Ward, what is it?" the commander yelled. Dylan turned, shoving the note into his pocket. "Sir, I have a new piece of intelligence. I need 2 men on container C7. Now, check the manifest. We are here for the Catalina load." Check C7, Dylan roared, using his authority for the first time. Check the timestamp on the logs. 2 agents scrambled. Riley stood, cuffed, her heart hammering. This was Jun Park's final move. One of the agents yelled from across the yard, "Sir, I have got something. These logs. They are not for Vega. The payment is from Dominguez. The routing number? It is for a known weapons supplier. The timestamp is from last night. This is an active shipment. Sir, this is the real thing." The entire CFEB operation shuddered to a halt. The commander stared at Dylan, then at the printout the agent was running over. The case against Cassian, built on Mercer's bad intel and Riley's false reports, had been flimsy. The evidence of an active illegal arms shipment by Raul Dominguez, happening right under their noses, was solid. The commander's focus snapped from Cassian to Raul. "Change of plans, secure Dominguez, secure container C7, that is our priority." In the sudden, chaotic shift of focus, as agents ran to the new target, Cassian moved. He did not run. He strode forward, his purpose absolute. He reached Riley in 3 long steps. Dylan was standing right next to her, but he was turned, shouting orders. Cassian's hand closed around Riley's cuffed wrist, the third and final grab. He pulled, hard. The chain of the cuffs strained. Dylan turned, his eyes meeting Cassian's over Riley's shoulder. He saw the man who had taken her, the man she had chosen. He had his gun. He could have raised it. He could have stopped them. He took one. Slow step to the side, a deliberate, painful hesitation. He let her go. He was repaying his old debt, closing the door on their life. "Go," Dylan whispered, so low only she could hear. Cassian pulled her into the shadow of a massive cargo truck, one of his own. Griffin was already in the driver's seat. In the confusion, with the CFEB now focused entirely on Raul and the new evidence, no one saw them go. As the truck pulled away, Valeria Santos, from a secure location, uploaded a complete file to the CFEB's public hotline. All the proof of Cole Mercer's corporate espionage, sold to the highest bidder. Raul Dominguez was arrested by the feds. The mole was exposed. The harbor was, for now, Cassian's. The truck sped down a service road, away from the docks, as the sun finally crested the horizon, flooding the cab with bright, clean light. Cassian took a key from his pocket and unlocked her cuffs. Riley rubbed her wrist, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She looked at him, the man she had just betrayed her past for. He did not start the truck. He just sat there, looking at her, the morning light catching the exhaustion and the raw emotion in his eyes. He reached out, his hands closing on her shoulders, and pulled her toward him. He rested his forehead against hers, their breath mingling in the small space. "The first note you gave me," he said, his voice low and rough, "made me notice you. This note, the one you gave to him. It saved me." He pulled back just enough to look her in the eyes. "I am not a good man, Riley, and I am not a safe one. You know that. But I do not want to lose you." He took her hand, his thumb stroking her palm. "Stay with me. Not because of a debt. Not because of a threat. Stay because you choose to." Riley looked at his hand, then back to his face. She had been running on adrenaline and fear for weeks, but in this moment, there was only a strange, terrifying calm. She had made her choice on the dock. She smiled, a small, tired smile. "Where are we going?" It was all the answer he needed. A slow, genuine smile spread across his own face. He leaned in and kissed her, a deep, slow kiss that was not about possession, but about acceptance. He released her and nodded to Griffin. The truck's engine roared to life. They did not go to the tower. They did not go to her apartment. They drove for hours, into the rising sun. A private transport was waiting, by nightfall. They, along with a confused but safe Maya and Eli, had been spirited away from Bay Bridge. The story closed on a new morning, days later, in a place called Las Marinas, a desert port town where the mountains met a sea that was brighter and bluer than any she had ever seen. They stood on a balcony, the air warm and dry, watching the sun rise. He took her hand. A new life, a dangerous one, was just beginning. Thank you so much for listening. Where in the world are you tuning in from? Let us know in the comments so we can all connect and share our thoughts. Please subscribe to my channel, Mafia Boss Stories. Like this video, and give it some extra love by hitting the hype button to help this story reach even more people.